Hello, you're on the Reddit Reveals channel. There was laughter in the hallway. That kind of sharp, breathless laugh that says, I had a wild night, and I don't regret a second of it. I stood behind the door, still in yesterday's clothes, holding a mug I hadn't sipped for hours. The coffee had gone bitter, cold, and stale, just like everything else in this apartment. Then I saw them. Her shoes. Red heels. The ones I thought she sold online 2 years ago during our tight budget phase. Guess not. She kicked them off like she didn't even care they landed in 2 different directions. Her bag thudded on the floor. No apology. No excuse. Not even a glance in my direction. She walked straight into the bathroom. Shut the door. No hi. No sorry. Just steam from the shower and the distant hum of her humming a tune I didn't recognize. And maybe it was stupid of me, but I still waited. I waited for her to say something. I gave her one more chance. But when she came out, wrapped in a towel like she had all the time in the world, her eyes flicked past me like I was part of the wallpaper. That was it. I walked to the kitchen, opened the drawer where we keep receipts, warranties, and that one pen that always leaks. Found a yellow legal pad. Wrote 9 words. I'm leaving. Good luck with your debts, Laurel. I left the note next to the bills she forgot to pay, again. Then I packed one bag. Just one. Left my wedding ring on top of the microwave. Closed the door as gently as I could. And you'd think that would be the end. But the next morning, I woke up in my brother's spare room to 17 missed calls. And the very first voicemail? It wasn't her voice. It was a man's. He said one sentence that made my blood run cold. You should have stayed, Elwood. You really should have stayed. I must have replayed that voicemail 5 times before my brain could even begin to understand it. You should have stayed, Elwood. You really should have stayed. His voice was calm. No threat. Just calm, like someone giving advice after it's already too late. And maybe it was. My first instinct. Laurel put him up to it. Maybe it was some new manipulative game to scare me into crawling back. But something in his tone didn't fit. He wasn't smug. He wasn't angry. He sounded disappointed. Like I'd just triggered something I wasn't supposed to. I didn't call back. I couldn't. My fingers hovered over the return call option, but my stomach twisted every time. Instead, I tried to focus on what I could control. I went into full damage control mode. I called the bank, froze the joint account, transferred the emergency savings I'd stupidly shared access to. I didn't even know how much she'd already drained, but the number staring back at me was less than half what it should have been. Of course, I thought leaving would give me peace. That once I was out, I'd feel some kind of freedom. But that first night, I didn't sleep. Not because I missed her. No, it was the silence. It was the terrifying realization that I had no idea who I'd been living with. And worse, I think she always knew I didn't have the guts to really confront her. The next day, I got another message. Not from her. From her boss. Hey, Elwood. Just checking in. Laurel hasn't shown up to work. Everything okay? I didn't answer. Mostly because I didn't know. She hadn't called. She hadn't texted. I expected a storm. Insults, guilt-tripping, fake tears. But there was nothing. No retaliation. No defense. Just silence. That was more unsettling than any screaming match. I drove by the apartment. I didn't go in, just parked across the street like a coward and watched. The lights were off. The car was gone. Her red heels were still in the exact same spot I'd seen them last, tossed at the foot of the stairs like the remnants of a game I didn't know I was losing. By midnight, I cracked. I drove to her friend Myra's house. I had only been there once, years ago, but I remembered the yellow door and the awful wind chime made out of spoons. Myra opened the door wearing a robe and a confused look. Elwood? She said, clutching the door like she expected me to snap. What are you doing here? I asked if Laurel was inside. She laughed. Laurel? I haven't seen her in over a week. That was impossible. Laurel said she was at Myra's place just 3 nights ago. She told me you were sick, I said, watching her face carefully. Myra blinked, then frowned. She said you left her, packed up, and disappeared. I thought you were with your parents in Ohio. I stared at her. Then I asked, so you don't know who Devin is? Her face twisted. Who the hell is Devin? My stomach dropped. So even Myra was out of the loop. And that meant Laurel had gone underground, disappearing from her job, lying to her friends, and now somehow connected to a stranger who left me a voicemail in the middle of the night. I should have walked away. I should have blocked every number, burned the memories, rebuilt my life. But I couldn't. Not after what I found the next morning at the apartment mailbox. A single envelope. No stamp. No return address. Just my name written in perfect cursive. Inside was a photo of me, sleeping, taken from inside the apartment. And below it, scrawled in red pen, "Leaving was your second mistake." I held that photo for over an hour. I couldn't stop staring at it. The way my head tilted slightly to the left, the blanket pulled just under my chin, my mouth slightly open. It wasn't just a photo of me sleeping. It was intimate. It was recent. And it was taken from inside the apartment. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was, I recognized the angle. That exact vantage point. It was from behind the bedroom mirror. The one Laurel had insisted on installing herself last spring. She said it was cheap and aesthetic, something she'd found on a weird vintage home site. I hadn't thought twice about it. Until now. I drove back to the apartment like a madman. Parked crooked. Left the car running. I stormed inside, expecting to find her there. Hiding, waiting, anything. But it was silent. Too silent. My keys still worked. Nothing looked out of place. Except now I was noticing things. The mirror. I approached it like it might breathe. I tapped it. Knocked. Then I peeled it off the wall. Behind it, a hole. A literal hole in the drywall. Not large, not deep, but enough to fit a small camera. And inside that hole was something worse than I'd imagined. An old phone. Taped. Black screen. Camera facing outward. I pulled it out. It was still warm. I didn't even know what I was supposed to feel. Rage? Fear? Shame? No. Just nausea. What was this? Why was she filming me? And more importantly, who else was watching? I charged the phone. It was encrypted. Locked with a 6-digit code. I tried her birthday. Nothing. I tried mine. Still nothing. Eventually I gave up, sat on the edge of the bed, and let the weight of it all crash down. My wife. No, the woman I thought was my wife, was spying on me. Filming me sleep. Disappearing for nights with men who left voicemails like riddles and sent photos like threats. And somehow, I still missed her. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat with my back against the closet door, gripping the phone like it might detonate. I kept checking the window, the hallway. Every sound made my skin crawl. Every silence made it worse. At 3:17 a.m., the phone buzzed. It powered on. No passcode prompt. Just a black screen. Then, a single notification. New video received. I opened it. The screen stayed black for 5 seconds. Then I saw my apartment. My kitchen. From last week. Laurel was sitting at the table, sipping wine, smiling. Across from her, a man. Dark hoodie. Baseball cap pulled low. The audio was quiet. Muffled. But I could make out pieces. Laurel. He thinks I don't notice how pathetic he is. Man laughs. Laurel. I could ruin him in a week if I wanted. Man, you already are. She smiled at that. Then she leaned forward and whispered something I couldn't quite hear. The man nodded, reached into his jacket, pulled out another phone. One just like the one I was holding. Laurel took it, kissed him on the cheek, then looked into the camera, directly into the lens, and said, "Elwood will never know what hit him." The video cut. I stared at the screen for a long time, and I swear I could still hear her laughter, faint and echoing, somewhere inside these walls. I didn't leave the apartment the next morning. I couldn't. I sat on the edge of the bed like a broken piece of furniture, staring at the phone, waiting for another message, another video, another whisper from the shadows of my life. Nothing came. Just the low buzz of traffic outside and the hum of the refrigerator I never noticed before. I kept replaying the video in my mind. Laurel's smirk, the stranger's voice, the casual way they discussed my worth like I was some dull object left out in the rain. By noon, I started walking around the apartment like it was a crime scene. I looked behind every photo, under the couch cushions, inside the vents. I pulled apart drawers and tapped every bit of drywall. I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe answers, maybe proof that I hadn't lost my mind. That's when I noticed something strange above the hallway, a faint square in the ceiling. A hatch, barely visible. I had lived here for years and never once noticed it. We didn't have an attic. At least, I thought we didn't. I dragged a chair from the kitchen and reached up. The wood groaned, but it opened. A little ladder dropped down. My heart pounded. The last time I felt this way was the day I waited for my father's diagnosis. That same sick, cold sweat. I climbed up slowly, every creak in the steps echoing through the apartment like thunder. The space was small, barely enough room to stand, but there were boxes. 4 of them, all identical. No labels. I opened the first box. Inside were photos. Dozens, maybe hundreds, of me. At the grocery store. In the school parking lot. Sleeping on the couch. Laughing with my co-workers at a picnic from last summer. None of them taken by me. All of them taken without my knowledge. The second box was worse. It was filled with journals. Not mine. Hers. Pages and pages of my habits. My moods. What time I brushed my teeth. What I said in my sleep. Times I cried. She even documented how often I hesitated before answering a question. Things I didn't even realize I did. The third box was locked. I didn't even bother trying to open it. My hands were shaking too much. But the fourth box, that one shattered something in me. It was full of cassette tapes. Actual, ancient cassette tapes. Labeled with dates. Years of them. One for almost every month we'd been together. And there, on top of the pile, was a tape labeled simply, Elwood's Breaking Point. I don't even own a cassette player. But someone did. Because that night, when I left the apartment to breathe, just for an hour, and came back, something was different. The chair under the attic was gone. The hatch was closed. And taped to the bedroom mirror was a new photo. It was me, in the attic, holding the tape. And on the back, in her handwriting, don't listen to it unless you're ready to remember. That word, remember, echoed in my head for hours. What was I supposed to remember? What did she know that I didn't? Was this all just about cheating? About control? Or was something else buried in the years I'd spent forgetting who I was to keep her happy? I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I just sat there, in that dark room, whispering to myself. What did I forget? Over and over, until morning finally came. I didn't even realize how long I'd been sitting there until I heard the birds. That pale blue light crept in through the blinds, soft and cruel. I had spent the entire night holding that cassette tape like it was some cursed object I was too afraid to drop. Elwood's Breaking Point. For words written in her delicate, mocking script. The same hand that used to write me love notes in the beginning. The same hand that tracked my every breath without me knowing. I needed a cassette player. I found one at a thrift shop 2 towns over. The cashier was a teenager who asked me if I collected vintage audio. I said nothing. He smiled and rang me up. If he had looked just a little deeper, he might have seen the hollow behind my eyes. I brought it home. Locked every door. Closed every curtain. Turned off my phone. Then, with hands that trembled harder than I wanted to admit, I pressed play. It was my voice. Not hers. Not the man's. Mine. I sounded younger. Lighter. It must have been years ago. I was laughing about something stupid, and then it shifted. I could hear her in the background, coaxing me gently, asking me about my dreams, my regrets, my fears. I spoke so freely, so open, like a man who truly believed he was safe. A man who trusted. I talked about my brother. About how I'd always lived in his shadow. About how even in our adult years, I still flinched when people compared us. I admitted I felt invisible next to him. I confessed how Laurel made me feel seen for the first time. Then my voice dropped. I think sometimes I fake being okay, I heard myself whisper. Just so she doesn't leave. Then there was a pause. I must have been crying. Then Laurel's voice, crystal clear, close to the microphone, like she was leaning into it. That's good, she said softly. Don't stop. She wasn't comforting me. She wasn't soothing. She was documenting. Capturing. Like a researcher observing a subject slowly cracking open. The tape went on for an hour. And it got worse. I talked about how I hated myself. How I never felt like a real man. How I thought, maybe, if I just gave Laurel everything, money, space, forgiveness, I could earn her staying. That if I became small enough, she wouldn't look elsewhere. And through it all, she said almost nothing. Just the occasional MHM. Keep going. You're doing great. As if this wasn't a moment between lovers, but an interview for something I didn't understand. When it ended, I didn't cry. I just sat there in the silence that followed. My own voice echoing in my skull. The sound of a man who had offered his entire self to someone who was never going to love him back. But then, something strange happened. The cassette kept rolling. Even though there was no more conversation. No more talking. Until a new voice came on. It wasn't Laurel. It wasn't me. It was male. Older. Calm. Elwood, the voice said. If you're hearing this, then she's already disappeared. I froze. She's very good at what she does. And if she left you that tape, then you were never just a husband. You were a mark. There was a pause. You need to get out of the apartment. Immediately. Don't pack. Don't think. Don't look for her. Because if you do, she'll know. The tape ended. That night, I slept in my car. The next morning, I woke up to 3 texts from Laurel. Elwood. I can explain. You shouldn't have listened. You've ruined everything. And the 4th message? A photo of my brother, sitting at a cafe, across from her, smiling. At first, I convinced myself the photo had to be old. A coincidence. Photoshop. Anything but what it so clearly was. My wife? Ex-wife? Former handler? Whatever she was, smiling across a cafe table at my brother, Thomas. Her head tilted in that way she reserved for charming strangers. His posture relaxed, coffee in hand, looking like he belonged there. Like he enjoyed being there. Like it wasn't strange at all. I stared at the photo for 20 minutes before my hands started moving. I called Thomas. Straight to voicemail. I texted. Nothing. Not even the dots that told me he was typing. He was always the one who responded immediately, even if it was just a thumbs up or a busy, call you later. But now, silence. And I knew what that meant. This wasn't a new betrayal. This had history. I drove to his place, barely thinking, the world outside my windshield reduced to smudged colors and traffic lights I barely saw. I rehearsed what I'd say. Maybe I'd give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe I'd scream. Maybe I'd punch him, cry, collapse. I didn't know. But when I pulled into his driveway, his car was gone. The neighbor, a sweet elderly woman who once baked us both cookies when I helped shovel her porch, was watering her flowers. I asked if she'd seen Thomas. She smiled and said, "Oh, he left early this morning. His girlfriend picked him up." Girlfriend. Not Laurel by name, but she said it with a knowing tone. That kind of tone. I tried to keep my face from breaking. I nodded, thanked her, got back in the car, and drove until I hit a gas station I didn't recognize. I sat there in a parking space, watching people walk in and out with chips and soda and lottery tickets, lives that weren't exploding like mine. I tried to remember the last time Thomas had actually asked about my marriage. About Laurel. About me. The honest answer? It had been months. Maybe longer. He had been distant, sure, but I thought it was just work, stress, life. The usual. But now, with everything I'd found, the tapes, the photos, the hidden phone, a new idea was forming in my mind. One I didn't want to admit. What if he'd always been part of it? What if she hadn't been manipulating just me? I thought of the phone call again. You were never just a husband. You were a mark. That voice. That warning. That implication. And then I thought about something else. Something small. Something stupid. About a year ago, Laurel had convinced me to open a new joint investment account. Said she read about couple-forward finance strategies and how pooling money could build intimacy. She even gave me articles. Charts. I didn't question it. I was just happy she wanted to plan a future with me. But now, I remembered the financial advisor's name. T. Whitman. Thomas's full name? Thomas Whitman. He had set it up. He had helped manage the account. He had full access. I hadn't just been betrayed emotionally. I'd been played financially. Like a project. A coordinated, long-game con dressed in romance and family dinners. The laughter. The birthday gifts. All of it, rehearsed. Engineered. My phone buzzed again. A new message. Unknown number. Stop digging, Elwood. This wasn't supposed to go this far. Attached was a screenshot of my apartment door. It had been taken just 10 minutes ago. Whoever sent it had been watching me, which meant someone was still inside. I drove faster than I ever had in my life. When I arrived, the door was slightly open, and sitting in the middle of the living room floor, like an invitation or a trap, was the locked box from the attic. Only now it was open. Inside, a USB drive and a wedding ring. Not mine, Laurel's, but twisted, bent completely out of shape, like it had been stepped on. Crushed. I didn't touch the ring at first, just looked at it. Bent, misshapen, almost symbolic in the way it refused to resemble what it once was. It felt intentional, not dropped or damaged by accident, but destroyed with purpose. A statement, an ending. The USB drive next to it was plain. No label. Just matte black plastic, the kind you'd find in a tech drawer filled with expired batteries and missing charger bricks. But I already knew it wasn't ordinary. Nothing about this was. I hesitated only a moment before plugging it into my laptop. There was a single folder. Inside, 7 files, each labeled with a month, each named after me. Elwood_January, Elwood_February, all the way to Elwood_July. No year, Just months. I opened January. It was a document. Pages and pages of typed observations. He stares at the floor when he lies. When confronted, he apologizes first, then panics. Will avoid conflict at all costs. Excellent trait for sustained manipulation. Still unaware of second account transfer. Thomas was right. He never checks his statements. It was a behavior profile. Of me. Not from therapy. Not from casual notes. From observation. Detailed, brutal, emotionless. I skimmed through the rest. Each month grew darker. By April, there were mentions of medication. Not mine, hers. Or rather, the medication she told me she was taking. Anti-anxiety pills. She said they helped her sleep. That they made her forget the trauma of her childhood. I had even picked them up for her at the pharmacy, handed them to her with water and a kiss. But the notes revealed something else. Pills replaced with inert duplicates March 12th. No reaction. He doesn't notice packaging differences. She hadn't been taking anything. She was testing if I would notice. If I would ask questions. I didn't. In May, the tone of the notes changed. His self-worth is degrading faster than expected. He's begun talking to himself in the shower, low muttering. Possibly rehearsing how to confront me, but can't follow through. Thomas suggested introducing the idea of shared surveillance as a joke. Gauge reaction. Rejected. We'll use softer manipulation. By June, the cruelty was clinical. Sex withdrawal complete. He blames himself. Success. Removed photo of his mother from bookshelf. Noticed in 3 days. Logged. He now initiates every apology, even when I sigh. Conditioning complete. And then July. The last file. Short. Just 1 sentence. Ready. I sat there, blinking at the screen like I'd been struck. My whole body felt hollow. Weak. Like all the bones inside me had been quietly replaced with wet paper. This wasn't a relationship. It wasn't even a con. It was a project. I wasn't her partner. I was her subject. I thought about the nights we danced in the living room barefoot. The random I love yous. The inside jokes. The promises. I thought about all the little kindnesses that now reeked of calculation. And I thought about Thomas, my brother, the one person I thought I could trust even in silence. The drive had one more file I hadn't noticed. DO__open. Of course, I opened it. It was a video. Short. Blurry. But I knew the voice. Laurel's. She was sitting in what looked like a warehouse or loft space. Bare walls. A table. That man from the cafe, the one with the baseball cap, stood in the background. She looked into the camera and said, "If he opens this, it means he broke protocol. That's fine. It means we're moving forward earlier than expected. Elwood, I want you to remember one thing. None of this is personal. You volunteered. You don't remember, but you did." She smiled. Not with cruelty. Not with warmth. With satisfaction. You signed the forms. You wanted to forget. You said, and I quote, "Make me someone who needs love so badly, I'd believe anything." She leaned closer to the camera. And we did. The video ended. My ears were ringing. I was shaking. Volunteered? I stared at the laptop like it would explain itself, like the pixels might rearrange into something else. A joke. A lie. A test. But deep inside, something cracked open. A small, quiet memory, buried under years of numbness. A waiting room. Fluorescent lights. A clipboard. A woman asking, "Are you sure?" Once it starts, there's no undoing it. And my voice, tired, broken, saying, "I don't want to feel this pain anymore. Just make it go away." The days that followed blurred together. I didn't eat. I didn't speak. I barely moved. I stared at walls like they might offer answers the files couldn't. That final video played over and over in my head. Laurel's calm voice, her final message, her twisted idea of mercy. You signed the forms. You wanted to forget. Had I? The thought clawed at my chest. Somewhere beneath the ache, beneath the humiliation, beneath the betrayal, there was something real. Something I had buried willingly. I went back to the attic. Not to find more evidence. I needed to sit in it. To feel the weight of what happened. I opened the journals again. I read the worst of it. And slowly, painfully, memories returned. It wasn't just about Laurel. This had started before her. The depression. The hopelessness. After Mom died. After the failed engagement before Laurel, the one I never talked about. I had gone looking for anything to erase the ache that had swallowed me whole. That's when I remembered the clinic. The forms. The soft-voiced woman who asked if I wanted out of my own mind. I thought it was some kind of experimental therapy. I hadn't asked enough questions. I hadn't wanted the answers. But I remembered saying yes. Make me someone else. Make me forget who I was when I lost everything. I guess they did. Laurel wasn't just pretending to love me. She was playing a part one had unknowingly cast her in. But she went too far. She changed the script. She weaponized the role. And in the end, she tried to break the very thing she was supposed to rebuild. But here's the thing. She didn't. Not completely. Because when I finally looked in the mirror that night, I saw something I hadn't seen in years, me. Not the broken version. Not the man waiting for someone else to decide if he mattered. I saw someone who had been through hell and still got up. Still stood. Still had more chapters to write. I took everything. The tapes, the journals, the USB, and drove 3 hours to the clinic. I walked in, placed it all on the front desk, and simply said, I remember. The woman behind the glass looked up. She didn't look surprised. She just nodded and said, then you're ready for debrief. I won't lie. What followed was painful, uncomfortable, but necessary. I learned the program had been shut down a year ago. Ethics violations, abuse of protocols. Some participants never came back to themselves. Some disappeared entirely. But a rare few, managed to climb out of the wreckage and build something real from the pieces. I was one of them. I deleted Laurel's number. I changed apartments. I cut ties with Thomas completely. I don't know if what they did was out of malice or just pure detachment. And I stopped caring. I stopped needing closure from people who never planned to give it. Instead, I gave it to myself. It's been 6 months. I'm back in the classroom now, teaching again. The kids don't know any of this. They just know I care. I listen more now. I speak slower. I don't fake smiles anymore. And last week, something strange happened. I laughed. Not the hollow kind I'd faked for years. A real laugh. Full. Ugly. Loud. And I didn't feel guilty for it. I don't know if I'll ever fall in love again. But I know now that I don't need to. Because I finally learned how to love the one person I kept abandoning. Myself.